Well, hey! Welcome to my booth. My name is Jay. I work in VoiceOver. And the question I get asked a lot is, what is the best microphone for VoiceOver? Well, the short answer to that question is, whatever microphone you got in front of you is going to be the best one at any given time. No! Kind of a cop-out answer, but what that really boils down to in seriousness is you don't need a specific microphone. You don't need a fancy microphone. And you sure as hell don't need an expensive microphone to get started in VoiceOver, to build a successful career in VoiceOver, and to be perceived as professional, let alone get really great quality recordings. Because ultimately, you behind the microphone are what matters most. So take that for what it's worth. And if you find yourself getting tied up in finding the perfect microphone for you, whatever microphone you end up with is going to get you there. Now, with that said, there are a few decision points that you might want to consider if you are looking to buy your first microphone, maybe upgrade your microphone. And so I'll talk you through just a few different things that I might consider to sort of get you in the ballpark of what might be the best microphone for you at this point in time. The first thing to think about, USB versus XLR microphone. The main difference between those two, if you don't already know, USB microphones plug straight into your computer via a USB cable, and they're kind of a one-stop shop, all in one. You don't need any extra equipment. XLR microphones, on the other hand, require a little bit of extra gear, namely an audio interface to, well, interface with your computer. If you're the kind of person where you aren't sure if VoiceOver is something you'll want to stick with, if you're just trying it out, if you are doing it for fun, if it's a hobby, you're recording a podcast with a buddy, recording voiceovers for YouTube videos just for kicks, or if you're, say, an actor and you get one or two voiceover auditions every blue moon and you just want something better than your phone to record those on, in any of those scenarios or any variations of those scenarios, I think that you might be just fine with the USB microphone. If, however, you have any aspirations to make VoiceOver a full-time, part-time, or even serious side hustle, and you wish to be competitive doing so, skip the USB mic and go straight for an XLR microphone. Again, you don't need anything fancy, but the trade-off, you're getting better audio quality, which some people request. Some clients that I work with will not take audio from USB microphones. Additionally, I don't really think you're saving that much money by just dipping your toe in the water with the USB mic and then having to upgrade a couple months down the line when you decide that this is something you want to be serious about. You can always sell the gear off, and audio gear has a really great resale value, and you can also buy really high quality stuff used. Most of my microphones I bought used, and they're all excellent quality. Excellent quality. This mic was made in 2004, and it's good as new. The next thing to maybe mull over in your brain is the type of microphone you want to get. If you want to get a condenser microphone like this guy here, or if you want to get a dynamic microphone. Now, again, this is more so in the XLR microphone conversation, but I won't get into the technical differences between what these two microphones are. From a practical perspective, what it really boils down to is their sensitivity. Dynamic microphones are really good at noise rejection. I'll show you in a moment when we take a listen to this guy, but if you're in a not very well-treated space, if you don't have a booth, if you don't have great acoustic panels or even halfway decent acoustic panels like I've got here, or if you deal with just noise interruptions on occasion, maybe you live by a noisy road, airplanes are going over all the time, a dynamic microphone might be a great option for you. Now, the trade-off is by virtue of these not being very sensitive, there is a little bit of detail in your performance that they're not going to pick up, at least relative to condenser microphones. It'll still get the bulk of your performance, but for most of the jobs I do, a condenser microphone is your weapon of choice. And just because of the detail and nuance and life that it captures in your performance relative to what you're going to get from a dynamic microphone. So with that said, if you have the ability to invest a little bit more in your recording space, getting good acoustic treatment, maybe getting some better isolation for yourself, and you can handle a condenser microphone, it's going to, I think, be a better catch-all in most use cases. That isn't to knock a dynamic microphone, just my 2 cents. The last thing to consider is, well, maybe not last thing, but the last thing I'll mention is your budget. I would say for a good, decent microphone entry level, look to spend about $100 minimum. Now, you can buy all sorts of great microphones for $100 minimum. My recommendation is usually the Audio-Technica AT2020. It's an incredibly popular entry-level microphone. Then if you've got the budget to swing it, jumping up to about the $300 microphone range, give or take $50 to $100, then you're getting a really significant jump in quality. Then after that, the curve kind of smooths out and you're getting less and less, more diminishing returns as you go up the price scale. $500 microphones up to about $800 microphones, yes, will still sound better than a $300 microphone, but not on an order of magnitude that you would see from, you get what I'm saying. And then if you get up to $1,000 microphone, the increase is even less, but those microphones are the elite mics, the ones that'll be in your locker, on your booth, on your stand for decades, your whole career. And then if you go above $1,000, the difference is just preference, more or less. What I'd like to do now is take you on a tour of the different microphones that I use here in my studio and talk about the different use cases, the pros, cons that I've found using them as a professional voiceover artist. So let's give them a listen, shall we? Alrighty, the first microphone we've got here, this is the Shure SM7b. It is a broadcast dynamic microphone. And the things that I really loved about this guy is, again, noise rejection, as I was talking about a moment ago. To demonstrate that, if I turn the microphone, you'll notice that the sound of my voice drops off, despite the fact I'm talking at the same volume. And then if I turn it back around, you'll notice that the volume picks up really significantly when I get right in front of it. So just imagine a car drives by or a plane goes overhead. Relative to this microphone over here, a condenser, this is going to cut that out like something that you cut out. It's exceptional at noise rejection, which makes your quality of life in day-to-day recording, particularly if you're doing long-form recording like audiobook narrations where the mic is just on for hours at a time and you don't want to have to worry about a little bump here and there. Additionally, this mic handles really well. This movement isn't really causing any sound artifacts or anything like that. So beyond the quality of life and noise rejection, the tone of this microphone is really, really pleasant. It's why it's so popular in podcasts and audiobooks, because it smooths out and just gives a really warm body to your voice, my voice in this case. And it almost dulls out a ton of frequencies, so there's nothing that it's going to be particularly harsh or grating, which is really, really beneficial in a lot of use cases, namely long-form narration and broadcast settings, which is where this is designed for. Now, again, by the same token, the lack of sparkle or detail by virtue of it sort of dulling it out, that's a double-edged sword for this one, and the main reason why I'll opt to use another of my microphones over this one in many use cases. The last thing that I've found with this is it being a dynamic microphone, it will experience some amount of radio and electromagnetic interference. Any electrical equipment or cables or outlets in the walls, they give off a little bit of a signal. If I orient this microphone in certain directions, I pick up a little bit more of that in my booth in particular. You may not experience it in your booth, but it's something to consider. So as an example, you can hear just a little bit of a that other microphones won't give you that issue. So this is the Shure SM7b, a lovely, lovely microphone that is quite fun to use. Let's hop to the next one. All right, the next microphone I've got here, this is the Earthworks ETHOS. It is a broadcast condenser microphone. You'll notice it looks similar to another microphone here, and you can kind of think of this microphone as this company's challenge to the SM7B. They both are looking to enter into similar markets. They are both broadcast microphones, after all. The reason I got this microphone when I already had the Shure SM7B is because it's a condenser microphone. So what I was saying about the SM7B lacking just a little bit of detail and nuance, the Earthworks ETHOS here picks all that up, and it does all the things that I really appreciated about the Shure SM7B. Great noise rejection, really smooth, warm tone that's great for long-form narrations, of which I do a lot of, and just all the pros, but it also gives that detail, so it doesn't really have any of the cons. Additionally, it doesn't have that interference issue with radio signals here and there that I was experiencing. So I use this microphone, again, on audiobooks, on some of the article narration that I do, and when I'm doing other broadcasty type stuff, because I think it sounds really, really nice on my voice. Okay, let's hop to the next guy. Well, okay, the next microphone we've got here, this is the Neumann TLM102. This was the second ever condenser microphone that I bought. The first being the Rode NT1, which I sold to reinvest into this little guy, and I couldn't be happier. The things that I like about this microphone, firstly, the tone of it I think is very complimentary to my voice. Relative to the other Neumanns, I think it has a little bit less of a sibilance to my voice, at least, than the others do. In addition to that, I found that the size of it is really great. For me, I really appreciate, because it's so small, that I don't have to worry about my field of vision getting clogged up when looking at my screen, because I have my recording software just over here with my scripts and everything. And if I have to be dodging pop filters and massive microphones and giant shock mounts, that just becomes grating when you're doing it for 6 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So with this little guy, that's just not an issue because it's so tiny. For whatever that's worth. The only thing that I noticed with this one relative to the other Neumanns that I'll show you in a moment in particular, the 102 requires a fair amount more gain from my audio interface, which isn't really a positive or negative thing in terms of if you've got a decent space, that is, if you've got a decent audio interface that's not introducing a lot of preamp noise. But something to consider, and one of the reasons why I use the other Neumanns that I have at this point more often than this little guy. Speaking of, next up, this is the Neumann TLM103. Some call it the 102's older brother, some call it the U87ai's younger brother. I don't know what that means, but it's a great microphone. It sounds really nice, and relative to the 102, I'll let you draw your own conclusions, of course, but to my ear, and experience, this microphone picks up a little bit more of my chest resonance, the bassier notes in my voice. It does them a little bit more, it gives them a little bit more love. I don't know how sultry and bassy I actually sound in real life, but this sure as hell makes me sound like that. It also has a really wide presence boost, which means the upper frequencies of this microphone get a little bit crispier with a nice shine to it, which I find really nice if I'm doing a lot of auditions. It just gives my voice a really exciting, forward-leaning sound. Whereas I feel like the 102 is just a smidge more relaxed, almost, if you want to think of it that way. The only thing about this microphone is it's incredibly sensitive, so it's not, if I didn't have this booth, I would probably find it more trouble than it's worth. Because if, say, my wife decides to walk, then I have to stop recording for a moment, which in terms of quality of life for recording isn't great, and it's also just not really fair to the people who live with me to constantly ask them to be quiet. So sometimes I'll elect to use other microphones instead of this one just because of that. But let's hop to the last Neumann. Alrighty, the second to last microphone that I'll show you here. This is the Neumann U87ai. It is an incredibly popular voiceover microphone in professional studios specifically. If you've ever watched a behind the scenes of like a Disney movie or an animated show, that's you've probably seen one of these up in front of the actors there. It's used on all sorts of stuff, and with good reason. It's got a great sound, and it's just really neutral, doesn't do much but just capture your voice, lets you do your thing. In my use of this thing, I mean, it's great. The only thing that I've found and why I would choose to use, say, the 103 instead of the U87 is, as I was saying with the 103, it has that sort of crisp boost, and they really gives a lot of love to the bassier chest resonant notes in my voice. So this sounds natural, just unprocessed, and this sounds a little bit boosted. It gives you a little bit of love. So that would be the main difference in why I might elect to use this one over this one. But in terms of like audiobooks, long form things, I prefer this over the 103 because it doesn't have that punchy, excited character to it. It makes for a little bit more of an easy listening experience. So the last microphone that I'll show you, this is the Sennheiser MKH 416. It is a shotgun supercardioid condenser microphone. All that means, well, it looks like this instead of that. But it also has an extremely tight pickup pattern, supercardioid. Essentially, it's a laser beam shooting off of the end of this thing. So if I go off of it at all, you notice how quiet I get really fast, which is, again, really, really great if you are in a less than ideal space. That's why this is my travel microphone. If I go on vacation and I don't know if a job's going to come through, if a special audition's going to come through, and I need to record it last minute, I'll strip a couch, throw some blankets over me, make a pillow for it, duck in a closet somewhere, shut myself in the car, and I've got myself a makeshift booth that sounds really good. So much so that when I play back those auditions or jobs after the fact and compare them to the sound here in my booth, sometimes I ask myself why I even bother with a booth, because it just sounds so good. Now, one of the reasons why I won't use this microphone over the condensers that I have, the other large diaphragm condensers that I have, because it has such a tight pickup pattern, if I'm doing a physical performance where I move around, I don't want to have to worry about dipping out of the pickup range, in which case a cardioid microphone is a better choice for me. Additionally, this microphone in particular, its frequency response is good for picking up a ton of articulation. So if I'm doing something where I'm talking really fast, like a CTA, the syntax is not suitable for all patients or something like that. This is helpful in that because it's going to pick up everything. It's also helpful if I'm doing something that I needed to be really punchy, like a promo, because you can do the this summer, get really close and engage the proximity effect, and then you become bigger than life. So for those two applications, this is great. However, the frequency response has a really intense presence boost, which is why it can pick up all those articulations, but it becomes a little harsh and sibilant on my voice sometimes. So, pros and cons there, but great for a travel microphone or if you don't have a very well-treated space or booth. Well, there you have it. Those are all the microphones in my studio. Is there a best among them? I don't know. You be the judge. Which one sounded the best on my voice to you? Which one sounded the best to your ear? And to give you a little help with that, in terms of determining purely the tone, not about what I'm talking about, not my intonation, I'm going to read a little bit of just a sentence or two of a Winnie the Pooh story for you so you can get a direct A to B comparison between all of these microphones. If you'd like to do a blind test, well, just close your eyes or turn the screen away from you and listen to all of them. Take mental notes of which ones you dug, which ones you didn't, and then flip it back around and see what the judgment was. I'll have myself do it, and my wife will read some sentences as well, so you can hear both a male and a female sounding voice. And on we go. One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet." One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet." One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet." One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet." One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet." One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet."
One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet." One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet." One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet." One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet." One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet." One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet."
Well, there you go. Was there a best microphone for you? Let me know. I'd be really interested to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on that. If you have any questions about this, anything else VoiceOver, drop me a line down below or reach out to me on my website. If you would like recommendations about specific starting gear, check out my other video on the essential gear to get started, and that'll point you in the direction of not only the best microphones in terms of my opinion to get started, but also, other stuff. So until then, toodles.